In America, we don't cancel ideas, we put them to the test.
ICE involved shooting out of Minneapolis.
The left sees the world one way.
What we saw today is a murder.
The right sees it another.
It was an act of domestic terrorism.
And when those views collide, things get real. From Real America's Voice and Real Clear Politics comes a show that pushes bias aside in the search for truth. Two sides, one stage, one question at the center of it all. Where is the truth? This is Get Real with your host, David Desrosiers. And it starts right now.
Welcome to Get Real. I'm David Desrosiers. This is a joint venture between Real America's Voice and Real Clear Politics. The soul is in the structure of this thing. You'll see we're going to have a conversation with two people from Team Reds and Team Blue. They're equally matched. I think you'll find out that we don't bring straw horses here. We have serious conversations. It's been a great week in history, because it's been very interesting. But before we get into the bleeds that lead stuff, I'd like to really just kind of open the door for a conversation with a good friend of mine, Terrence Keeley. Who's founded a new company that I think we all should take note of. That is really, I think, transformative in a way that very few things have done. One of the good things about bringing a friend on the show, you finally get to wrap your head around them and get to know them a bit, right? So, I mean, I'll tell you the conclusion up front. I think this company of his is really an expression of his soul that he's been carrying through the market and creating value with wherever he's gone, but really has taken it to scale and taken it to public here. But Terry, you came on everybody's radar screen when you wrote a book with a good sounding name like Sustainable, something that would attract everybody, but it was saying moving beyond ESG. I mean, and then I think the second book you wrote with Phil Graham, it was like replacing, getting rid of ESG. And I think what you're talking about in the piece that you wrote for us on abundant happiness, it's really your solution to the problem. I mean, I think what the best books have this in common. They understand that the only way to overturn a bad idea is to put a better idea in its place. And I think you outline that in this. And if I could just kick it off for a conversation, I think the problem that we have, and I think you tackled in your piece, is that instead of abundant happiness, which we should have within reach, like we have abundant sadness, or what some other authors I think have called suicidal empathy, right? I think you found a study that explains why we are so wealthy and also so miserable.
Well, let's first of all, David, congrats on the show. Anything that is elevating the truth is something that not only this country, but the entire world needs. And if we get into it long enough, we're going to find at least one of, I think, our shared convictions is that there may be a lot more to Catholic social teaching and the principles of human dignity, subsidiarity, and solidarity that would answer some of the deepest longings, some of the deepest needs of humankind in this precise moment. That ending ESG title seems a little bit aggressive. In fact, the goals and the values that are espoused by those who have been promoting the concept of stakeholder capitalism is something I deeply believe in, as you know. But I'm also deeply convinced that trillions of dollars of capital are currently misallocated to strategies like ESG strategies, which aren't making the world more inclusive, which aren't making the world more sustainable. And there's a better solution. You asked me to talk about this piece, Abundant Happiness. And I think it's, we can state the thesis right up front. It's very, very simple. Professor Richard Easterlin, who was at the University of Pennsylvania and then later at the University of Southern California, made just a very clear statistical observation. Yes, societies do, in fact, grow in completeness and flourishing and happiness when they start improving their income. But at some point, there is a trade-off, and more does not lead to more. In fact, more can be less. And it appears that in the United States, anyway, this Easterlin paradox, where greater wealth is not, in fact, propagating greater happiness, greater contentment, is something that we as a society need to discuss, talk about, look at it, investigate. Why is it that, you probably have the data right there, David, I sent it to you, but 1980, total wealth in America was 40 trillion. Yep. Today it's 200 trillion, right? So it's up 5x since 1980. But today Americans are twice as likely to be lonely as they were in 1980, and they are 40% more likely to be dissatisfied. 84% of Americans were satisfied in 1980. Remember when that was? It wasn't quite morning in America. We were just ending Jimmy Carter, but 84% of Americans back then expressed themselves as being satisfied. Today, that's 44%. Americans are wealthier and less satisfied than they were 30, 40, 50 years ago. Let's talk about that.
But aren't both of those by design? I mean, we're unhappy, I believe, by design, right? And I would even argue that ESG, the thing that I do hope is replaced, the logic of it was to create that unhappiness, an unhappiness that never actually would have returns and would make things for people unhappy. That's the way I looked at that. I mean, but what say you?
Well, I think that ESG is a long story, and I'd rather send people to my books. Broadly speaking, the United Nations Principle for Responsible Investment were propagated in 2004, and a multi-trillion-dollar industry has come out of that, which was intended to promote the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, but there's a better way to get there, and we'll get to that. That's right. The 1.6% solution. On this more specific issue, though, of, let's call it human nature, human flourishing, there's quite a science behind this, David. It's not that we actually have to look very deeply at the cause of less satisfaction. We actually know it. We are communal beings. We are social beings. We actually need relationships. We need community engagement. We need family relationships. We need friendships. Things that are very, very promotive of those ends are things like religious communities, other types of social communities. Remember, people used to get together at the Rotary Club, used to get together. We have become more individuated. And in many ways, we have lost, I think, the broader narrative of very basic civic virtues that used to bind us together. I was having a conversation with a dear friend yesterday. It seems today, David, that hate has almost become a virtue.
Yeah,
hate is now a tool that people use on both sides, right? On both sides to accomplish their ends.
But in the time that we have remaining, really make the case for how you have a solution to this pollution. What is the 1.6% solution?
Right. Well, so let's take it from Lin-Manuel Miranda, right? In Hamilton, how can we solve one problem with another? The fact that we have such great financial abundance is an extraordinary opportunity. And what the work of my company, the Impact Evaluation Lab, and other very important participants in the impact investment ecosystem now know is that there are great opportunities where one can get decent financial returns, and I'm talking 10, 12, 15, 18, 20% returns, while also solving some of our greatest challenges, whether or not that's low-income housing, taking plastic out of the ocean, promoting entrepreneurial opportunities for people who have been excluded from the workforce. It's very possible today, David, to allocate a portion of one's capital very specifically to truly value-added impact investments. And just to put a number on it, it turns out that we need about $4 trillion a year to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Well, while that sounds like a lot of money, that's only 1.6% of the assets that are currently at the complete disposal of ultra high net worth individuals. and institutions. So when you think about it, you only need 1.6% of your portfolio to put to some of these things: low-income housing, carbon out of the air, clean tech energy solutions, any number of other opportunity sets. If we were to be more thoughtful about the allocation of our assets towards things that generate greater sustainability and greater inclusivity, we'd be a happier world. And it wouldn't come at any material expense.
No, and what I like about what you stand for and what you're bringing to market, it's like, I think there is a lot of misallocated capital. I mean, if everybody gave money and followed you instead of, Bill Gates or Soros or even the Davos crowd of how they've been spending these assets, I think you would get to that end that you want. In a minute that we have left, say something. Sign off.
Well, it's clear, we're all in this together. I don't know how you felt seeing these pictures coming back from our astronauts on the moon, David, but we are part of a divine creation. We are all divinely inspired. We are all created in God's image, and we're on this extraordinary planet with the opportunity to do two things: to know and love our Creator and to know and love one another. And we have the material capacity to do that like never before. So, what we're hoping to do at the Impact Evaluation Lab is provide people a roadmap for whatever they want to do with their capital and whatever way they want to express it to achieve their goals for this life and the next.
Yeah, and I would say, rich folks of America, follow Terence Keeley. Put your money where his mind is. I think you'll find out that he wants to make the world a better place, but he also wants to do good and do well. So I think at the heart of everything he does in his mind is a return to really fiduciary responsibility and that type of investment. It sounds nice, it sounds too good, but it's like, I think he's that good and this company is that important. When we return to Get Real, the cost of giving peace a chance.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more.
Leaf Filter is America's #1 gutter protection system.
Yeah, because it's built right.
But you didn't just take our word for it.
I didn't. I went to an install, I saw how it was built, I took it apart.
Then Leaf Filter is designed to keep debris out of your gutters and water flowing. And you get a lifetime guarantee.
When it's built right, it shows. That's why it's Homes approved.
It's good to be #1.
Always.
Schedule your free gutter inspection today. Call 877-77-HOMES or visit leaffilter.com/homes.
My friends, I come to you today on behalf of the Jewish people in Ukraine whose lives have been completely destroyed. Family and loved ones brutally killed. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is inside of Ukraine, providing emergency food and supplies to tens of thousands of people.
I am shocked how many elderly people came here. They're afraid, and they realize now that there are more people than boxes.
For just $25, you can help rush an emergency food box to the elderly Jews in Ukraine. Many of them are hungry, frightened, and alone. Today, there's a special opportunity to double your gift's impact. Call now, and your gift's impact will be doubled.
The people of Ukraine are caught in the crosshairs of war. Many of these precious people are Holocaust survivors, elderly Jews who are sick and dying. They have no food, and we must reach them now before it's too late.
The world is in a war again. I am alone. I'm afraid of the bombs. I'm scared. I am old. There is no food.
Just $25 helps rush emergency food to elderly Jews in Ukraine who are in urgent need today. Please call, scan, or go online right now.
I will not starve. Thank you, good people.
We can be the hope to the Jewish people who are suffering in Ukraine. Your help is desperately needed now.
Thanks to generous fellowship partners. Call now and your gift's impact will be doubled.
Did you know that thousands of authors across the country have written books and published them with Page Publishing? If you've written a book, Page Publishing can help you through the process. We cut through the confusion of the publishing world to make it easy for you.
Call or scan for your free writer's guide today.
Welcome back to Get Real, brought to you by RealClearPolitics and Real America's Voice.
Welcome back. I'm David Desrosiers, and you're watching Get Real on Real America's Voice. Joining me now is our all-star panel, or soon-to-be all-star panel. I mean, I hope to bring you up to the sky, guys. But I'd like to kind of start with like basic introductions of why we have the panel together. I mean, you know, Dan McCarthy is the new heritage wise guy, and I think you're one of the most high-minded populists out there. So thanks for coming on. And then next to him is John Tillman. He's everything. I mean, I think you're the strategist to the stars. I mean, you just had we had you on talking about your book, The Political Vice. I think you're going to squeeze out some knowledge for us today on what's going on. And then, you know, there's Madeline over there, Somerville on Team Blue, who, quite frankly, she's fast talking, she's fast thinking. And one of the things that she's not, which I love about her, is that she's not scary like many of the people of her generation. So she's always enlightening, always fun. And then we got Ellis there, who's our kind of non-raging Cajun. I mean, it's like it's always good to have you guys. And I know we got Georgia and New Orleans over there, but there's something about a blue strategy that I see kind of forming from seeing both of you guys work together and work on us. I like it. One of the things I think that, you know, is in the war, you know, the war is obviously front and center, but what's really kind of I think most interesting part of this week is, you know, that I think, you know, the Pope is in Trump's head. He's trying to give peace a chance. And it turns out that, you know, doing so has its domestic political problems, right? I think Trump has found out that putting time on the clock is difficult in a time where it seems both Republicans and Democrats are watching the shot clock at home, right? You know, so I think you see it on both sides. As you would expect, Trump is like punching back, and he's calling people's names. I think he might have even used the word traitorous. But, you know, and I think it's important that he does call these fouls. But my favorite, you know, of the week, I mean, really was the performance that Jake Tapper had on the Bill Maher show. I'd like that to be the frame of our conversation. So I'm going to ask the Dave in my ear if he wouldn't mind running that, and when we come back, we'll start the panel.
So Israel has 7 Democratic allies left in the Senate.
Well, first of all, it's not just Bernie Sanders. As you note, it's 40 Democrats who voted for this. And basically
That's
what
right.
they said
only 7 allies.
Was pretty straightforward. And I talked to a number of them before the vote. I think they did the right thing. Why? Because the President of the United States, those 40 Democrats.
The 40?
Yeah, because the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel brought the United States into a war that basically was misbegotten from the beginning, which cost American credibility, cost American lives, and cost American families at the gas pump. And basically those Democrats shouldn't vote for anything that supports that war, including more weapons to Israel. I think that's just a basic proposition. If you are not wanting to support the U.S. and Israel continuing the war in Iran, you shouldn't be voting to send more weapons to Israel. I think that is the right approach for those 40 Democrats to take.
Well, I see why Biden lost.
Welcome back. I have to apologize to Jake Tapper. Jake has his own problems, but saying this wasn't his. So I really do think this is kind of just the sweetest example of an attempt, I think, by our own, you know, fellow citizens of trying to rip a defeat out of the jaws of victory. So I'm kind of tipping my hand. I don't understand this very well. Alice, could you help me understand this?
Sure. Actually, I think we hope that we may get a little victory out of the jaws of defeat. I might flip it on the head for you. there, David. Listen, it does certainly make sense. I mean, Israel dragged us into this thing. I think that's pretty clear. The Secretary of State has made that abundantly clear, and we're paying a big price for it. It's getting harder and harder to. And I know I have a lot of friends who still try, but it's getting harder and harder to defend this adventure, right? If all goes well, if Donald Trump's best dreams occur, gas prices will eventually come down for Americans. The Strait of Hormuz, which was completely open before this started, might reopen again, probably with some tolls attached to it. Instead of an aging leadership in Iran, we're going to get a more fiery, younger, more engaged leadership that hates us more. And maybe, and this is probably a lot to hope for, maybe we could get some international inspectors in there like we did during the Obama deal that Trump ripped up. Zero, honestly, is about the most we're going to hope for out of this thing.
Oh, thank you for your optimism. Dan, why don't you state what you see in this? I would ask you to think, and everybody to think about who benefits from this type of thing. Does this help us in our hand in getting the best deal out of the Iranians? Dan, what say you?
It's teaching the Iranians that there are absolutely lethal consequences for the course that they've been on, both with regard to their nuclear program, but also with the terrorism they've continued to support and their general, sort of the danger they pose to their region and a growing danger they pose to a wider world, including Europe. So I actually think that the Iranians have paid a very heavy price. I mean, you can look at, what's been done to their military facilities, their air force is wiped out, their conventional navy is wiped out. They have lost, not just one, but perhaps several generations of leadership. This has decimated the Iranians, and now they're going to have to, come to some agreement at the end of the day that's going to, yield up and give up their nuclear program, give up the enriched uranium they have, which is already, heading towards weapons grade. And this is going to resolve a problem which has been festering for a very long time. So as difficult as it is, and as much leverage as Iran may seem to have with the Strait of Hormuz, actually, we are proving you can't just use the Strait of Hormuz to hold the entire world hostage. You still have to come to the negotiating table. And if you don't do that, you will be bombed to oblivion. And Trump has been, quite clear about the lethal consequences, again, of what will happen if the Iranians do not take this offer seriously.
Madeline.
So I'd love to address some of the things that we've talked about so far, and then I'll kind of give my general opinion. But when Ellis was mentioning Oh, real fast. I'll talk real fast. You said I'm a fast talker. So victory out of the jaws of defeat. So I like that Ellis mentioned this specifically because I think that even when it comes to Democrats, we still don't want to be embarrassed on the world stage. People forget that Democrats can be patriotic, right? And that we still do want to look good, that we still do want to feel like we're doing the right thing. I always think who benefits is the right question, cui bono. And in terms of teaching the Iranians, I think that at least my generation, the generation after, are tired of being the world's teachers because we're tired of the perception around the world that we are imposing ourselves upon others. So my general statement is that I think that the generations that are alive today, unlike every other generation that has existed prior, now can see people on the other side of the world and can humanize them and know that they're people too. And so war itself is an extraordinarily difficult sell to people who are alive now. The military-industrial complex has a lot to lose every time we interact with somebody on the other side of the world because we know they're people. It's hard to commit any sort of war act and to ask somebody to get behind it when you realize that people are people everywhere.
Thank you. John, what say you?
Well, the crying on the bottom of the screen there says give peace a chance. I'm always amazed at how many people don't want to give war a chance. I mean, the Iranians have been waging war against the United States for 47 years. The Obama agreement with Iran allowed them to continue to enrich nuclear weapons. Imagine this world today, right now, if the Iranians already had a nuclear weapon. We would be in a very, very different place. And so I was opposed to this war before it started, but now that it's underway, I think we ought to give it its full measure and see if we can't find a way to get to a better place where maybe the Democrats can actually start siding with the American or the Iranian people instead of with the Iranian authoritarians and murderers of their own people and the mullahs. What's really happening here, by the way, why is it the left, the Democratic Party, is now anti-Israel, 40 senators voting against that measure, or for that measure, rather, to stop selling weapons to Israel? It's because they recognize that in America, there are more Muslim immigrant voters than there are now Jewish voters. This is showing how the power game has changed for the Democrat Party and how desperate they are to hold power. They don't really have any core beliefs. They shift their allegiance from Jewish voters and those who support Israel to Muslim voters and those who support Iran. It's wild and bizarre. I never thought I'd see it, but we're seeing it right there.
No, I think you hit it, John. This is, one of the problems that you see. This is why AIPAC exists, is because of this type of thinking and the importance of actually standing up to it and not letting it spread. Thank you. When we return, the return of bad ideas on the left and the right.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more.
Leaf filter is America's #1 gutter protection system.
Yeah, because it's built right.
But you didn't just take our word for it.
I didn't. I went to an install. I saw how it was built. I took it apart.
Then you know, leaf filter is designed to keep debris out of your gutters and water flowing. And you get a lifetime guarantee.
When it's built right, it shows. That's why it's Homes approved.
It's good to be #1.
Always.
Schedule your free gutter inspection today. Call 877-77-HOMES or visit leaffilter.com/homes.
My friends, I come to you today on behalf of the Jewish people in Ukraine whose lives have been completely destroyed. Family and loved ones brutally killed. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is inside of Ukraine, providing emergency food and supplies to tens of thousands of people.
I am shocked how many elderly people came here. They're afraid, and they realize now that there are more people than boxes.
For just $25, you can help rush an emergency food box to the elderly Jews in Ukraine. Many of them are hungry, frightened, and alone. Today, there's a special opportunity to double your gift's impact. Call now, and your gift's impact will be doubled.
The people of Ukraine are caught in the crosshairs of war. Many of these precious people are Holocaust survivors, elderly Jews who are sick and dying. They have no food, and we must reach them now before it's too late.
The world is in a war again. I am alone. I'm afraid of the bombs. I'm scared. I am old. There is no food.
Just $25 helps rush emergency food to elderly Jews in Ukraine who are in urgent need today. Please call, scan, or go online right now.
I will not starve. Thank you, good people.
We can be the hope to the Jewish people who are suffering in Ukraine. Your help is desperately needed now.
Thanks to generous fellowship partners. Call now and your gift's impact will be doubled.
Did you know that thousands of authors across the country have written books and published them with Page Publishing? If you've written a book, Page Publishing can help you through the process. We cut through the confusion of the publishing world to make it easy for you.
Call or scan for your free writer's guide today.
Welcome back to Get Real, brought to you by RealClearPolitics and Real America's Voice.
Get Real is back with its all-star panel. Madeline Somerville, Ellis Hennigan, Dan McCarthy, and John Tillman. Dan, you proposed that there was a bad idea floated this week, particularly on the issue of immigration. You wrote it for the Post. I mean, as always, you seem to frame a segment, so frame the segment for us.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the Republican Party in Congress is not entirely behind the agenda that President Trump was elected to represent back in 2024. Republican voters, the voters who put Donald Trump back in office, want illegal immigration ended, and they want illegal immigrants deported. But unfortunately, there's a Republican congressman, Maria Salazar from Florida, who wants to create amnesty, basically, for tens of millions potentially of illegal immigrants. And she sees this as being a humane measure. The legislation she's introduced is called the Dignity Act. Actually, it has a Spanish name. It's the Dignidad Act. And, it's clear that this is a return to the playbook of the pre-Trump Republican Party, which thought that it could reach accommodations with progressives and liberals when it came to issues like immigration. And that not only failed comprehensively, voters rejected it by choosing Donald Trump, a decade ago to begin with, and as recently as 2024 as well.
No, that's very good. Madeline, could you maybe defend Congresswoman Salazar, kind of make the case for what Dan is missing?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, I'd like to reference some statistics very quickly because I've been following the Cato Institute's publications on this recently because the White House has said that the Cato Institute wasn't telling the truth, and they did not like that at all. So they came back with this. According to the Cato Institute, even low-skilled and undocumented immigrants are a net positive on the economy. Low-skilled immigrants paid $11.5 trillion in taxes and received $9.7 trillion in benefits for a net positive of $2.8 trillion. Undocumented immigrants decreased the national deficit by $1 trillion over the measured period, contributing to more than 11% of the total fiscal gains. They're an overall net benefit to the country. And when it comes to using words like dignity, right, because I read the piece, and I mean, as a trial attorney, we use words like dignity when we work on nursing home cases where people ignore elderly people. It goes to the same point that I made in the beginning about humanity. I consider myself to be a very principled person, even though I'm classified as a Democrat, one of the Democrats who apparently doesn't have principles. But the principle is being a pacifist against war. The principle is that this can be done a different way. The principle is that we can treat all humans like human beings. And again, this is a major, major threat to people who want America to look a certain way. And it's a major threat to people who work in the military industrial complex. And I think that the vast majority of people, as it's showing in the polls, are in favor of giving people a path to citizenship because they recognize that people are still people and that they're not nearly close to near the amount of criminal activity that the president says that there is.
John Tillman, your turn.
Well, I've long been a very pro-immigration person, but I think this is a great column by Dan because it really points out the so many on the right don't understand the situation we're in. Madeline just gave us all the statistics as to why this is an economic benefit. This is not about economics. This is about American culture. This is about America's 21st century destiny as a nation and who we will be. And it's not about what we look like. I think the vast majority of Americans, whether they're white, brown, or black, don't really care about the color of your skin. What we care about is the American ethos. We care about American values and principles and American exceptionalism. And when you have a massive influx of immigration that happens so rapidly that you can't properly absorb it and maintain that American ethos, that American cultural norm of our exceptionalism, because we are different than other cultures and we should take pride in that and we should brag about that and we should fight to preserve it. So this is about preserving American culture. And when immigrants come here, we want to say that terrible thing from so long ago. We want people to assimilate into the American way, not change America into the way of the country that they left. This is a simple idea that now so many seem afraid to state clearly. We should preserve what has made America exceptional and welcome people in a proper way, coming here legally and in numbers that we can absorb and make sure they are fully acculturated and assimilated over time into the American ethos.
Your turn, Ellis.
Well, David, I'm very glad that Madeline spoke so eloquently about the many benefits of immigration. So I get the delight of focusing simply on the politics of it. So there is clearly a desire in this country to evict criminals who are here, people who are committing violent crimes and immigrants and sending them home. That polls extremely well. Also polling fairly well was shutting the border down. But let me tell you what is not polling well and has turned out to be a political disaster for the president and his anti-immigrant supporters is taking otherwise law-abiding people, our nannies and busboys and lawn care people and food delivery people, and sending them all back either to their own original countries, to the countries of their families, and sometimes even these third-party countries with which they are completely unconnected. The brutality of it, the violence of it, the abusive tactics that have been used by ICE and Border Patrol have shocked the conscience of the majority of Americans. In poll after poll, people make that clear. Send the killers and the rapists home, but leave my nanny alone. And Salazar will not be the first Republican to peel away. We're going to get dozens and dozens of them.
No, I think you make a good point where the American mind is, that it wants a closed border, but it wants what's here to be addressed with in a prudent fashion, and I think one that's attendant to the concerns that people have for citizenship. If I could offer with the time that we have left in this panel, just like I think an idea that would work, I must tell you I'm partial to Hispanic immigration. My wife was an anchor baby. She doesn't like when I say that, but it brings out the Latin love for me in her. But the basic idea would be this: is like, if the only crime you've ever made was crossing a border illegally, you're in this country, you're presently employed, we can get you a green card status. But with the green card, it's clear you're not going to become a citizen. So you get the economic benefits that I think that John Tillman's interested, but also, you get the cultural benefits of saying, we can manage and digest it this way. And I do think you could tie on all types of adders to it that would, that would kind of make it, you can't take public assistance, you get a crime, you get out, and that this is transferable even to one's kids, right? So I think it's a big idea. You guys can, I'll give Madeline an opportunity to see if this is a common ground you could get behind.
I would love to respond. Thank you. I'm so excited. I thought I was going to have to interrupt somebody. So here's the thing. I want to ask the question, what is it that immigrants are bringing that is against our American values, right? Because if we're going to recognize the statistics here, and one of the things I love about these panels is that we operate from a place of science and truth. I think that it's just objective truth that less than 5% of the people who are currently in ICE custody have ever committed a violent crime, and that people who are immigrants here are 5 times less likely to be incarcerated. And people who are coming here just want to make a better life. So what value is it that they're bringing that's inconsistent with our own? If you can prove that they're...
I have to interrupt now, Madeline. I do. Perfect. Because have you heard of Minnesota? Have you heard of Minneapolis? Have you heard of the Somali immigrants and all the chaos and the fraud that's going on there and in California?
You're saying that
I say this as a pro-immigration person. The largest generators of wealth as a cohort are the children of immigrants. They've been fantastic for this country. The issue is not whether or not we want immigration. The issue is the speed at which we have it, the speed at which we can absorb it, and that we have a right to insist upon maintaining the American ethos.
I think we hit
but
the
that's not what you
balance
said.
point.
You said it's about the values.
I heard you. The good news is I think our audience heard both of you, and I think you all made great points. When we return, turns out that DEI will not die.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more.
At Allegiance, we do it differently. Flags 100% made in America by Americans with American materials.
We're proud to create jobs right here in South Carolina. It might not be the easiest way, but it's the right way.
We make American flags the way they should be made, where they should be made.
Join our pledge to keep the American flag truly American.
Visit showallegiance.com to get your high-quality American flag today. That's showallegiance.com.
Everybody hates Beth. She eats all the food she loves and stays slim. Kim starves herself dieting, yet still can't lose weight. Beth is full of energy. Kim always feels tired. Beth has an unfair advantage. She takes Almaced, a breakthrough health and weight loss shake that optimizes your metabolism to help you lose weight in a whole new way.
I couldn't lose weight no matter how much I exercise. I tried Almaced. I lost 26 pounds.
The reason you're having trouble losing weight could be a liver clogged with fat that's slowing your metabolism, making it very difficult to lose weight and stubborn belly fat. Almacet is a scientifically proven food supplement that uses natural amino acids and bioactive peptides to help unclog your liver and optimize your metabolism, so it's easier to lose weight.
My name is Stephanie Phillips Solar, and I'm an Almacet success story. I was able to lose 67 pounds with Almacet in roughly 7 to 8 months.
My weight is down. I feel much more energetic than I have in the past.
Over the course of time, I lost a total of 25 pounds. So thank you, Almacet.
Almacet is all natural, supports healthy blood sugar levels, and it's diabetic friendly. Some weight loss plans have you feel weak and hungry, but Almacet will renew your energy, and you can lose weight and feel great.
Almacet's unique protein can truly absorb in your body and aid with weight loss.
Studies showed Almacet helps you lose double the weight compared to other diets.
The fact is, Almacet works, and I highly recommend it.
Go to almacet.com now to get started for just $39.99. That's $4 a meal. We guarantee you can lose weight or you'll get your money back. Be like Beth and get the unfair weight loss advantage with Almacet.
Welcome back to Get Real, brought to you by RealClearPolitics and Real America's Voice.
Welcome back to Get Real. We continue with our panel, Madeline Somerville, Ellis Hennigan, Dan McCarthy, and John Tillman. John, you wrote a piece this week, I think, inaugurating a new Substack page that you have that, I thought it was great. I think you kind of point to something that, is part of the political nature of politics, where you think an idea is gone. That's not usually the case, not ever really the case. They usually go regroup and come back, sometimes actually stronger. Would you summarize your piece for us so we could have a conversation about it?
Oh, well, it's a little like Jason in those Halloween movies. You think he's dead, but he's never actually gone. He just has a different mask, and he comes back out ready to slice your throat and cut off your limbs and all the rest of it. And that's kind of what this is with DEI. It's all gone into hiding. It's kind of extraordinary. There was even I wrote a piece some time back in the early days of the Trump administration celebrating the death of DEI. The vibe shift was real. Companies all over America were walking away from it in very public ways. But all they did was walk away in a public way. And this is one of the reasons I do respect the left so much. The left is much more cutthroat and aggressive and relentless and tenacious in pursuing its agenda. And this is a really good example. It's gone into hiding. They now call it fairness. I can't quite remember what that acronym stands for, but it's bad. It's just a DEI by another name. And what they really want to do, instead of doing very public sort of ostentatious celebrations, they really want to create under the operating system a systematized DEI, essentially, that accomplishes the same goals, but they call it a different name. And the bottom line in all of this is, the whole reason that DEI was so bad was it's overt discrimination against people in one direction or another, and we should just treat people on their merits. And if people are discriminating, if there is racism, it should be addressed head on for that. But people should be treated and respected based upon their merits. And that was where we were going. And unfortunately, this is a step in the wrong direction. No, and it really does sound like it's HR 2.0 grievance. People thought things were getting better. It seems like it looks, based on your reporting, that things are getting worse. Madeline, would you like to work in such an organization that had grievance weaponization through algorithmic control?
Absolutely. I think that DEI is a wonderful thing. I'd really like to address this concept of woke capitalism because I think it's really interesting. The point is that gentlemen like yourself is making the argument that corporations are going woke, or even if it means going broke. Right? That's the deal. And it's because both their shareholders and their employees, as we hear from people like Vivek Ramaswamy and Mark Andreessen and Peter Thiel, are coming in and saying, we care about things like the environment. We care about having people who are from diverse backgrounds here. And we care about treating people with human rights. And they learned about that in school. They learned that we were dumping chemicals in the water where we had factories overseas, and that those people were getting sick, and that they weren't being paid a living wage to be able to pay for their treatment, right? These are things that corporations were doing, and the people who are running those corporations are now running our government. And so it makes sense that the first thing that we would attack would be DEI. This is something that they don't want us to have to deal with, because the corporations thought at least the shareholders would want the bottom line to be making money over treating people with respect. And the deal is that these quotas, these quotas, they've never been quotas. They've always been targets. And they've never been targets that anyone has ever required that they meet. It's just something that frustrates people when you have to prioritize, and which, by the way, you can't prioritize anything over making money for the shareholders. That's illegal under Dodge v. Ford, or Ford v. Dodge appellate. But the point is that there are nefarious corporate interests that exist behind getting rid of DEI that really need to be considered and looked into.
Dan, what say you?
I just had a little bit of technical difficulty, but I think there's a fundamental clash in terms of values here, in terms of the actual, meaning of America and the meaning of our political parties. And unfortunately, I think our friends on the left are very much on the wrong course. And we've seen this, throughout our discussion today about Iran, the fact that, it's not America that's bullying countries here. It's actually the IRGC, and it's Iran that's doing so. When it comes to immigration, you can't simply say, hey, if I'm able to, bring in a bunch of money, but I'm an illegal immigrant, that's okay, that it's okay to violate the rule of law because, money is more important than the rule of law is. Money is more important than our immigration authority and laws are. That doesn't work. And now on this question of DEI, you're seeing the same thing, where basically the left says it's so important to have this sort of reverse discrimination and to attack, people who the left considers privileged, that it's okay to throw out the idea of colorblindness and merit. And I think that is fundamentally wrong. It's a moral division between the two parties.
Thank you, Dan. Ellis, or Duke Ellis, what say you?
Well, I certainly don't embrace any of the views that Dan just described to people of the left. What I do support, as most Americans do, is the concept of equality of opportunity. The idea that we all should have a fair shot at the good jobs and the opportunity to build wealth and the other benefits of living in the United States of America. And we know from the facts, these are just facts, that we still have a ways to go in some of these areas. I would point you to the distribution of wealth and how it's concentrated in such a small number of hands, and those hands all look pretty much like each other. So Americans, sure, we have a lot of values we embrace. Freedom is one, but another deeply embedded in our culture is the idea of equality. And you know what? You can call it anything you want, but we're going to keep trying to get there.
John, why don't you answer Team Blue? You heard them.
Well, I think the most important thing is, look, I ran a call center when I was in my 20s. I took over an office that had 80 employees in Chicago. 60 were white, 20 were black. 2 years later, we had 300 employees, 250 were black, 50 were white, because my predecessor wouldn't hire African Americans coming out of the west and south side of Chicago. I worked in a very integrated office in D.C. that was 60-40 white to black, and same thing in Detroit prior to that, same racial makeup. But the difference was in Detroit, it was mostly working class people. In Washington, D.C., everybody, regardless of their race, was well educated, most with graduate degrees. When I got to Chicago, it was a mix. The point here is that the way we help people move forward is to recognize them for their unique human traits and not start to discriminate against people based upon their skin color, their sexuality, their tall or short or fat or skinny, whatever difference you want to start focusing on. We should be focused on talent and merit and not some sort of artificial aspect. Rather than identity, we should be focusing on people's humanity. And I think life goes better when we do that. And then when people misbehave, because, there's no question there are still problems out there when it comes to racism, we address those head on. And I think the world has already changed dramatically in the last 30 or 40 years. I think DEI makes it worse, not better.
Well, Madeline, you look like you're itching to jump in, but I'd ask you to do it with the kind of the focus on this point that I think John is making, that that the solution to the problem, to the injustices that I think we all see, the means and the ends have to have a marriage. And I think John's making the case that merit over grievance is the solution to the pollution.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, but I would offer this analogy to try to think about it a little bit differently. So I recently saw Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, Peter Thiel's company, say that he actively recruits people who are neurodivergent, and I'm a neurodivergent person, because he likes the way we think better. And so he, regardless of whatever test score we have or whatever, if we are classified as somebody who is different, he's assigning a level of merit to us that we might not deserve, right? But because we're an undervalued group, because we used to be put in special education classes for a long time, and he's seeing a value to it in the same way that perhaps a company would see value to having somebody who might have soft skills that they've built in a community where they were more disadvantaged and had to work their way to where they were, right? I think that you can have value in different ways. The point of DEI isn't to lower the standards that you have to meet. The point is for recruiting. The point is to look deeper so that you can give people a chance who wouldn't have it otherwise, because as Ella said, it is deeply embedded in our culture to have that kind of equity, to give everybody a chance. And I think the worst aspect of it is that the people who are using phrases like unique human traits, right? There's a deep problem with that, because then you start saying, okay, well, people who look like this are more likely to act like that. And when you put an algorithm on top of it, it gets even worse. So the point is to be able to give everyone access to success. That's the goal, right? And when you start saying that they should be treated for their unique human traits, assigning a word like merit to it, it doesn't end up looking like that in the long run.
I'll give you 30 seconds, John.
Oh, unique human traits. I mean, come on, we can't say that word now. That's been banned. That's unbelievable. Of course, every individual is an individual. Each one of us has unique human traits. I applaud what you just talked about with Alex Karp, hiring people that are different. That is the whole point. He's choosing to diversify his workforce voluntarily because he sees strength in people like you and others like you. That's how it should work. We're not exactly seeing a big movement to try to get more female plumbers and electricians and carpenters, are we? We're not exactly seeing a big movement to try to diversify the number of people who are white playing in the NBA, are we? So the point is, there's much of the world where we see it, where merit, unique human traits, and gifts that make us all, I'm half Greek. I have a unique human trait here called this nose, right? I have no problem with that. I own my nose, right? We all have things. And by the way, Greeks are also loud and obnoxious like New Yorkers. So that's unique human traits. We should own those and not be ashamed and not label them through some subterfuge as if somehow it's some sort of racist hidden language or dog whistle. Hey, that was fun. When we return, let's talk about why Virginia is not the home for voters.
My flavor to your flavor, I'm gonna set your flag on fire. Talking about here now, Aiko one day.
Real America's Music is proud to introduce a new artist joining the roster, Rachel Holt, bringing a sound that blends traditional country roots with a modern edge. Rachel represents a new voice built on authenticity, experience, and a clear sense of identity in her music.
I like to sing Real America's country music. We're trying to get the origins of country music back and pretty much not be afraid to put God and religion back into country music and make songs with meaning. Nowadays, people are afraid to put that in their music, but we're trying to get it back to that.
Raised in Indiana and surrounded by music from an early age, her path into country didn't start in a studio. It started long before that, shaped by family, church, and the sounds that defined her upbringing.
Growing up, I went to an old Baptist church, and at those churches they have, a whole band up there doing bluegrass music, and that's kind of where I grew up on. My whole family does bluegrass music, but I would get up there and sing when I was little in church with my whole family up there, and we'd do like I'll Fly Away, the basic songs, but I kind of just got into singing through church, actually.
Those early influences continue to shape the way she approaches songwriting today, focusing on real stories and honest perspective. Now, stepping into her new release, Rachel continues to define her sound with music that reflects where she's been and where she's headed. Her latest single, Like the Sun, delivers an upbeat, feel-good energy built for summer and marks the start of this next chapter. You can get it now by scanning the QR code code on your screen or searching Rachel Holt on iTunes. Don't miss the chance to get to know Rachel Holt as she begins her journey with Real America's Music. Welcome back to Get Real, brought to you by RealClearPolitics and Real America's Voice.
Get Real is back. I'm David Desrosiers, the stable genius in the center of this conversation. I must tell you, panel, last segment was fun. Let's make this one equally as fun, and let's make it quick too, because we don't have as much time in this segment. I just really wanted to kind of bring up and put before you what happened in Virginia this week. I mean, I think their motto was Virginia's for lovers. Well, they're not lovers of Republican voters. It would seem that the net effect of this is to disenfranchise 40% of their electorate, and not just do so by cutting one or two out, but it looked like a mass extinction event to follow this. I know this is before the Supreme Court. I don't know, I'm not aware of the details, but I hope you guys will kind of help tease them out. And I'd ask you to jump in, John, about this, because you're a strategist, but could you explain why this was? Can you make the case for the left why this is any semblance of good, or just go into doing what you want to do, which is call this out?
There's a lot to this. So first of all, go to California, go to Maryland, go to New England, go to Illinois. Any of these states have long been gerrymandered to the advantage of the Democrats, and so there's been a response from the Republicans, and now we have this back and forth. So we're kind of in a mutual assured destruction moment. We'll see what happens in Florida and elsewhere on this. But the thing in Virginia, what I think is interesting about the election is about a 3-point difference to about 97,000 votes. The side voting yes, the coalition there spent a huge amount of money in comparison to the no side, and yet the no side almost won. This was the most conservative electorate in Virginia since Governor Youngkin's win in 2021. And frankly, if the donor class on the right had put more money into it, the no side would have prevailed. The biggest difference was that in the rural and exurban areas of Virginia, performed extremely well on the no side. You got what you expected out of the blue cities in Virginia. The problem is what we call the blue city strategy is there's a lot of dormant, aligned conservative voters in those blue cities that nobody goes after. We ran a program and turned out 30,000 of them. But if we'd had a couple more $1 million, we would have turned out a couple 100,000 of them and would have had a different result. And this is part of the problem is the Democrats and their donor class are all in, and you got to respect that. Unfortunately, we have too many people on the right who are making prudent decisions based on polling months in advance of an election. This looked like a lost cause long ago. Turned out to be close.
Oh, Ellis, what say you?
Gerrymandering's terrible, right? It undermines the important principle of one person, one vote, and screws a lot of people, and it ought to be denounced all around. I mean, unfortunately, Republicans engaged in this mid-decade gerrymandering, starting in Texas and then in other places. And at some points, Dems had to say, we're tired of being suckers here. I mean, you can't just let the other side steal the election from you and not respond. The great irony, of course, is that when all the dust settles, Democrats might actually get a couple of seats out of this. I wonder if the president who pushed this so aggressively has any regret about it.
Yeah, it's interesting where the Republicans were doing it in Texas and kind of mid-election, but they were doing it to actually have a representation. They wanted to do it to have it to be fairly reflect what the voting trends that were in their state. I mean, I think this is like a Harvard case study of disenfranchisement. Dan, what say you?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, this is a radical escalation. You can look at a state like Texas, which overall is consistently red. You can look at a state like California, which overall is consistently blue. But Virginia, on the other hand, is a divided state. It's a purple state. You have Democrats who have just taken control of the state. But before this, you had a Republican governor. You had actually a Republican slate of statewide leaders. You also had a pretty even split in congressional representation. This was a 6-5 state. And now the Democrats are trying to gerrymander this into a 10-to-1 state. It's an enormous, this is not just a partisan issue. This is also Northern Virginia taking votes, taking representation itself away from people who are downstate, more rural voters. And I think this will not survive the challenge in the Virginia Supreme Court. And I think it's an absolutely monstrous thing. It has clearly cost Governor Spanberger, who was elected, by quite a big margin last year. It's actually cost her an enormous amount of popularity. And Democrats now have a very, very bad reputation with rural Virginia voters.
Madeline.
I have to agree with my Republican colleagues, actually. I'm sorry, Ellis. I think that I can't be against it in one place and not in another. And I think that people should have adequate representation. I don't think that you should be creating districts just for the purpose of winning. I think that it was wrong to do it in Texas. I think that, the map should reflect the people. I respect that the people of Virginia did vote for allowing this referendum to take place, and they voted to allow to consider the question and to follow through with it. And based on the state's constitution, that's why this judge struck it down, because it was untimely. And there's case law that goes both ways. So the Supreme Court really could go both ways. But on a matter of principle, I gotta agree with my Republican colleagues. I want the Republicans in that state to have adequate representation, even if they don't agree with me.
Well, what a nice bipartisan note to end on. I mean, I've really enjoyed the conversation this week. I think everybody brought their A game. I thank you. I hope that to have you back. But I also like to thank the audience for kind of tuning into us. I think we're showing resonance. I think we got some heat and some fire and some light, and I think some good exchanges today. But thank you all, and see you next week when Get Real returns.